Welcome to the Leadership Labs with DeepRec.ai, a podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of deep tech entrepreneurship, company founders and venture capitalists. I'm your host, Anthony Kelly, and I'm thrilled to have you join us in this exciting journey. In each episode, we explore the minds behind groundbreaking technologies, the visionaries who dare to push the boundaries of innovation, and the investors who fuel the growth of tomorrow's game changers. Hello everyone, and welcome to this installment of the Leadership Labs. I'm your host, Anthony Kelly, and today's guest is Florens Greßner, who is the founder and current CEO at Neurocat. In this episode, he's going to tell us a bit about his background, a little bit about Neurocat. I guess what's most interesting is his rise from education, research into leadership, how he's coped with that, how he's upskilled, and then what he's learned being a very much deep tech person moving into a business. What did he really have to sort of embrace and upskill on? Just a flavor of what we're going to be talking about. But Florens, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Hey, nice to be here.
Good, no, pleasure. Before we kick it off, Florens, and before we get into the good stuff, tell us a little bit about you. Where did your life lead you to come down the road of computer science, of tech startup and entrepreneur?
Yes, I guess I was always very much interested in math, and at some point also in school I started programming, and it really caught me. Solving these kind of problems. I spent nights just programming some prototypes, different projects. If it was like a 3D scanner or a different Android app or so on, I always liked to just have a project to solve some problems. And in school, I was actually in some kind of a special class where I could already make my first university courses in high school. And this, when I actually came to university, gave me some time to also dedicate my resources on computer science. So I basically studied computer science and mathematics in parallel. And I was really wishing to figure out what I'm able to comprehend, and also in mathematics, diving down more and more into the abstract level of number theory and whatever. And the number of people get lesser and lesser, and the problems got harder and harder. And at some point, I understood there are also people who can just solve what I can do in 1 week, just in the lunch break. And if somebody's better than you, they're at least double as good as you. And also realized it doesn't have anything to do with reality anymore. And this is also the point where I figured out like what else I could do, that where I could apply my skills to my mathematical passion and also my passion for coding. And DeepMind at some point posted this video. I don't know if you remember it. They solved Atari just with one algorithm.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And this was amazing to me. And I thought, if this is possible, what isn't? And also I thought, and I read the papers, and I understood, okay, this is exactly these type of problems I'm educated to solve. Also the papers were so beautiful that I knew, okay, I want to do something with AI. And my CV is quite short. I was originally, I guess my first job was grilling sausages in a football stadium, and then
What football stadium?
after dropping out of university, I, with a colleague from studying and a friend, founded Neurocat.
Nice. Do you know what? Really, really interested to hear about why Neurocat, right? Because you've just mentioned massively driven by problem solving, massively driven by the research elements of it. In many cases, if you love research, industry won't provide you the same level of fulfillment, right? But you went straight for it. You went with Neurocat. Tell me why? Like, what was the drive to say, look, I've just finished university. I'm going to work with a startup.
Yeah, I think it was, I definitely wanted to do something with AI. I guess like a lot of people back in the day, and me maybe even today. And in university back then, you didn't learn about AI, but I tried to understand what it is. Understood it's basically just statistics and optimization. And a lot of people publish papers about some results, what kind of layer you have to switch with another one, and then things work better. And it wasn't really profound, and I didn't really understood why these things are working so well. I mean, I knew that the foundation, that it's basically universal function approximator, but I couldn't understand how one can ever apply this to a real world scenario. Especially, there are some things like adversarial examples where you can just calculate a very, very small noise that just makes every AI system not work anymore properly, or you can just hack in and steal some data. And yeah, we were quite concerned about this, made just some research, and by coincidence, there was an institute coming to our incubator where we were situated, this Dean Institute. It's basically some German institute for standardization. And they made a presentation, and we were just as naive to just ask if there's already a standard about AI. And this person was really much interested because there wasn't one. And actually, we then initiated the world's first standard for artificial intelligence. And I guess, yeah, this somehow led us. This was somehow the start of like an external interaction, also where customers came from. And it was just driven by trying to understand and comprehend why this works at all.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually, as I said, I remember you guys back when, you know, safety in AI was number one. But yous have kind of gone on a bit of a pivot since then, right? Now yous are looking at AI safety in ADAS.
Yes. So
Why pivot?
yeah. So we had quite, like, I guess continuously every startup has exploration phase and try to narrow down the proposition that you're having. In the end, it was about first of all our network and our customers that we already gained were also very much from the automotive industry. The pressure is very high, and we also understood our services, like evaluating or validating AI, is only relevant in safety critical industries. And there are like different industries that are safety critical, but for sure, the autonomous industry faces this problem that they cannot control the environment. If you go to a manufacturing site and you have some kind of robot that's autonomous, you can just put a fence around it and control it in a different way than just solving this real root cause problem. And the autonomous industry is basically confronted with an environment that's really hard to control. And that's why we focused on that. And it's a really, really tough and interesting problem there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's probably was one of the most hyped domains, right, of AI in total before GPT absolutely ruled it at the end of 2022, right? Everyone was like autonomous driving, self-driving cars. It's got a lot of rep. Still not there. Before I get into it, I want to just ask you because it's always something that I'm curious about. I want to always ask people who are in that space. Do you think if we were to create fully autonomous cities with no people driving, would we have autonomous cities in terms of public transport, vehicles, cars? Are we stopping it?
Are we stopping it? Yeah. To be honest, I don't really think that because I guess the problem with the autonomy is not really the human itself. I think it's the complexity of the environment. We have so many different parameters there. We have weather conditions, we have new roads, we have new signs, we have everything. You have to basically percept perfect and then percolate everything down what you're seeing to your actions. And it's just a very, very tough problem to solve, especially in terms of the safety culture that we are having. Okay, I guess I'm from Germany and we are a bit overregulated everywhere. However, this problem of reducing every unreasonable risk is quite complicated when you cannot understand the algorithm underneath, when you cannot really test it, because you cannot just collect all the data in the world with all the scenarios and all the weather conditions and all the combinations of weather conditions. There are infinitely many, infinitely rare situations that occur, and now try to understand what is unreasonable risk and try to reduce it. I guess the technology is great, but I guess the argument for safety and putting the systems in safe use, I don't think it really has to do with the people who are driving. There, it's rather like how to make it safe.
Nice. I like that. I'm always curious. Always curious. I often get different answers. So good to know. Um, yeah. So look, I want to talk about your experience, how you've gone from, yes, albeit a founder, I'm one of the founding engineers and developers at Neurocat, but finishing university in 2019, 4 years ago, right? You've had to undertake a lot of responsibility, shifting roles from team leadership and engineering to CTO to CEO. Every single one of those positions has its own challenges, and they're not only a little bit different than the last one, they're actually massively different almost, right? So look, talk to me about, let's say, your first experience coming out of university, what it was like in Neurocat to then transition into that leadership, that first initial leadership position.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess here it was basically my first real job. We were basically doing research in the beginning, like my co-founder and I. And first of all, the first thing we wanted to do is understand what AI actually is, and also had to gain experience on that. So we built like these algorithms also from DeepMind and applied them on the snake game and just tried to figure out and gain some
I
experience with it.
actually think I seen that.
You did?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah.
Yeah, then I guess Neurocat. I guess it was also on a website at some point. But yeah, this is quite that's quite funny, yeah. And yeah, at some point, and I already mentioned it, there was this Dean Institute who came to us. I mean, we were basically just a few people researching about AI and try to do something, find some customers. And this institute came by. We asked us questions if there is already a standard, and we piqued interest. So also for startup, it's very, very weird to go into standardization that early. And we had to basically prepare like some paper, some impulse paper to also convince and motivate others. And we're actually able to motivate like big players like Microsoft, IBM, and so forth to create this. And this was all new. I never talked in front of the big industry. I never had to work in the standardization gremium because it's rather for like established companies. But yeah, we had to relearn that. And it was also quite lucky that our first customers came directly from this, because we were one of the few people who actually wrote content and also moved and shaped it. And it was also seen. And Volkswagen was the first customer who came to us over this standardization efforts. And yeah, then again, it was the first time really customer was sitting in front of you, was asking you very intense questions. You thought like, oh God, Volkswagen, they all figured it out. And actually, they tried to figure out about these adversarial examples. I mentioned them before. Like you can basically calculate a small noise. There's an example with a little panda that the classifier classifies that panda. There's basically an imperceptible noise over it, and then it's classified as something completely different. And this cannot be really applied for autonomous driving. So we had to push state of the art a bit further in making it for detection and segmentation algorithms. And yeah, it's I guess it's like continuous learning from there on. There was not so much structure yet. We had to figure out what we have to do, and our mathematical background helped us a lot into thinking more generalized about these problems. These adversarial examples for the community was just something for classification, but we then generalized it for different tasks. We generalized it for different data types, for different model types, and so on. And yeah, this led us to also build up a bigger team. And first of all, we recruited basically our also colleagues from university, also mathematicians.
Of course. How else? How else do you grow an AI company, right?
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it's in the beginning, I always felt like they are doing me a favor. And it was also the first time of leadership because, I mean, we couldn't pay good salaries. It was basically then a student job also for everyone. And I guess the first stage was a lot about consulting for different industries. I just mentioned automotive, but we also did we did chatbots, voice assistants, drones, cars, trains, like basically everything, because everything has that applies AI has this problem. And yeah, it was slowly leading up to getting more structure and more people and an organic growth. And I guess in the beginning, it was rather a leadership of, yeah, this pace setting where were always responsible for these projects. You had to make sure everything works right. You had to make sure you satisfy the customer, and then somehow figure out a way how others can help you with that. And yeah, we basically consulted big industries with students, but
Nice.
everybody was very, very talented.
Now, here's where I want to get, and here's what I want to ask. So, young guy, young manager, not that experienced, but you are also not just managing people, you're managing people you know, which can be quite intimidating. Like to me, I've managed friends, I've worked with friends, and when I've been the manager, it's been more intimidating than people I don't know. How did you sort of feel and start to, I guess, give them a bit of structure?
Yeah, and yeah, I struggled a lot with it because you knew the people and you know their boss somehow, at least from structure, even though we didn't have big hierarchies and we're also solving these things eye to eye, like on an eye level. And yeah, these providing of structures came somehow naturally based on the things that we had to do because it was in the end different projects we had. We had different project teams. And when you just have a handful of people, I guess also now we are 40. In the beginning, it was just a handful of 9 or lesser than that. And the smaller the company, the easier it is also to structure their work. And
Of course.
at some point, I had to realize that I'm not asking them a favor for working there because it was also fun for them. It was motivating. Everybody could learn about the industry, could dive into interesting problems. And sometimes leadership is just about like giving direction and resolving unclarity. And this is already helpful for everyone, and it's not something to be ashamed of that I was always thinking about. Yeah.
Nice. No, look, I love that because it's a very weird feeling being a manager for the first time, and then being a leader for the first time, and then your team being people that you already know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, look, let's talk about it on the growth trajectory. So what was the so you moved into the CTO role after university after the students had actually come out a bit and they've become professionals, right? And you guys started to grow. What was that initial forced transition like? So
Yeah.
from team manager to CTO, what new responsibilities did you have? Like how much wider did you have to widen not only like your leadership skills, but this is where it's leadership, it's a real management role in the
Yeah.
CTO, management in yourself, management in Neurocat, and management of the team. So
Yeah.
it's pretty it's a lot bigger. So what was that difference like?
Yeah. Yeah. We as we also grew organically, we got more and more people and got more and more experience. So we wanted to put everything into one software and realized quite early that we cannot do it without financing. And we started to hire a lot of people also to prepare the product, that we can show something also to investors, because we were quite profitable in the consulting and organic growth. And then at some point, I was still locked into the position of working on the code, structuring the projects, providing architecture for the software, being still a manager, and also being a shareholder that had to do an investment round. So I had like so many different levels that were not healthy anymore to execute, because you cannot make like high level decisions and still be on a very, very much expert level on the code. So this had to change. And also in the same time, we needed more structure on the business side, because we had one, the business side somehow detached a little bit in that time from the tech, actually. We potentially made like source some projects that we wouldn't have been capable, because there was some understanding missing, and there was not really this counterpart, because we had project works, we had the software engineers, we had research engineers, and so on. So all this was very unclustered and structured. So it basically needed a head and a voice. I also again didn't go like on a higher level, and don't listen to the other heads that would be underneath it. It was more like we built a council basically together, where we were deciding things, and I was basically representing the tech, and also representing all of these different streams, and coordinating on this side. So it was definitely a different role, because I was then becoming somehow not managing different teams, but rather managing managers of teams. That makes it more high level, and you somehow get also detached from the code. And it was also my baby that I built up. I had to figure out how can I then find joy in this management. And a good friend of mine, who like also worked quite high at Zalando, at some point told me that management is also like programming, because you also have to specify the different workloads and components and so on, and somehow automate all of this. And this actually helped me a lot, getting acquainted with this management role, because I always had this fear of missing out on the code and on the technology level.
Yeah.
And then I figured out I can make much bigger steps with much lesser effort than if I would be on every level at the same time, just making high level coordination.
And this is obviously a really hard one, right? You've been working at Neurocat since it was a literal baby, before there was even a line of code written, right? So you then almost have to give parts of that away to everyone. You feel like it's slipping, and then until you can finally feel like you can control a little bit of the management, you don't actually get that back, right?
Yeah.
And you start to feel a little bit lost. You're like, and then that's when you're 20% in this job, 20% in this job, 30% there, and you're actually having a lot less. You end up so split. You're actually having like 20% impact in total of your possible like skill set, right? And that's the biggest challenge a lot of people face. You mentioned someone from Zalando spoke to you about that, how to understand your management role. Was there anything else, or like how else did you do it? And I mean, really, because Neurocat, real successful AI startup in Berlin, you got into it super young, leadership young, CTO young. Like, look, I don't want to say it all comes naturally. It might have, but there's obviously, to me, there's always elements. There's mentorships. There's coaches. There's programs that you may have went through. Like where did the upskilling start and stop?
Yeah, I think in the end, I'm always referring to extreme ownership. I guess it's also philosophy, or like a book that you really have to like. I didn't have
You've been reading my LinkedIn posts, eh?
Did I? Yeah. But I guess it boils down to extreme ownership, and just like never stop learning in the end, because I did not have the luxury to fail. a project, or I could not go to somebody and ask for help, because also it was unclear, like also getting a mentor or so on. But of course, always talking. We hired also some more expertise, and if you're listening to them and just understanding that they can do the things even in part better than you did before, it's more a matter of enablement. And I
Yeah.
also, in the same time, read a lot of books, or I actually listened to them as audio books on my way to work. Like there are different directions of leadership, especially in tech. And I think in the end, it boils down to enabling people who are better than you in some expert fields. And yeah, it was it didn't came naturally, not at all. It came with things you did wrong, things where you even then treat people wrong accidentally with good intentions, and then you have to fix it. And then you have to figure out, okay, how can I fix it? And then I go into books, I go into audio or audiobooks or whatever, and yeah, in the end, it's just a steady progress where I guess I will be never finished to actually do this. And I guess this comes with a big pile of love to the things that we are doing, and you do not want it to fail. You do not want your people to be disappointed. So this puts this kind of pressure for you where you have to find solutions for each and every problem one at a time.
Oh, I like that. Top class, responsible for your own development. Very much so putting yourself out there and how you're going to learn. Learning by doing, failing by doing.
Yeah.
On the flip side, right? Um, you mentioned about hiring people that were better than you at some things. I mean,
Mm.
again, as I said, it was your baby. How willing were you to delegate at the start?
Yeah, I guess everybody has troubles delegating, especially like new people also might have a different vision than you have. It's um, I guess it helped a lot to write things down also together with the new persons that came, or the new experts that came together, to just align and get it. Because if two people are talking about one thing and then they separately writing it down, then you will end up with understanding you actually talked about completely different things. And I think as soon as the vision is shared and you have an understanding of where you both want to go, um, it is easier to let go. And also, I guess I also slowly transitioned from bigger oversight to more high level things. However, yeah, this is basically, I guess, the most important thing there. And I also had a big trust, and I might be also trusting very quickly in these people. I was convinced by the confidence, and it's never that you will get a position, like you never get a title before you fill the position actually. And when they are already filled the position of heading like this consultancy department or heading this product, then giving them the responsibility afterwards is much easier than the other way around.
Now, next step in your career, couple of months later, um, you were then in the position of CEO. So, team leadership, CTO, bigger wide set of problems. CEO. First off, talk us to us about the difference for us. Was this just very much overseeing business and now beginning to move away from tech completely, or
Yeah,
how does the CEO roles particularly
yeah.
break up?
So we had to combine the business side and the tech again. And the CTO was basically just overseeing the tech, like our consulting, our product, our research, and so on. However, just due to the split itself, it causes also to a detachment if they're not basically overseen very well, because even the sales also has to be aligned with what's possible with the tech, or you're promising something that you do not have, and the tech is maybe working in a direction that they shouldn't have because nobody wants that. And it came also together with when we are closing the financing, and we also just identified and saw, okay, we are a big tech company. It is very hard to also fill this gap with somebody basically external who should have like this deep tech understanding and also being involved in this management topics. So we are basically just moved the company closer to the tech and also crystallizing it in one person. And this also included to overseeing this whole finance and operations side and also the sales. What was basically for me as a tech guy, like the worst thing you
I was
could
waiting for
possibly
that.
do, because nobody wants to be in sales. Sales is basically a word, or at least today I'm looking different on it, but it was definitely a different universe for me.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, really great decision to bring it all together. To move someone who's been so involved in the deep tech stuff and the AI into the CEO role, right? I've the amount of success stories I hear, right, of things, movements like that being successful. Obviously, you're one. You can then understand what the customer wants. You speak the language. You can understand the tech because you speak the language of the tech team, and you can
Yeah.
take it full circle, right? That's pretty cool. What I want to ask, and look, you can tell me you don't want to answer this. What was the decisions like in house when it was trying to create the strategy to say we need to bring tech closer to the business? Was it like you volunteering to be the CEO? Was it the founders, maybe like the council saying, "Oh, I've got an idea," and like was there options?
Yeah, I guess the options were so like this. We had I mean I said in the beginning we had basically like three active founders. I mean, we had also a fourth one who was like rather a business angel who financed us in the beginning, and the third one also moved further away from the company vision and was also seeking other opportunities then. And also it became more apparent and clear when closing the financing. And so it was in the best interest of everyone to just move them together. So it was a lot of internal work and internal structure, and then it became the natural idea, even though everybody, even me, I guess, was a bit hesitant. Also from the investor side, was like, I do not have sales experience or this business side experience, and also from my side, I would have also liked to be part of the tech. But now I think it was a very good decision to do that because it moved and aligned everything together.
Now let's talk about that. So you've really embraced it. You've you speak about sales like you enjoy it, right? I'm sure at first, as you said, wasn't something that you foreseen yourself doing. Matt's background, deep tech, research engineer,
Mm.
team manager, CTO, and now you're like, I'm involved with the business day-to-day strategy. I'm involved in the sales cycle, marketing, fundraising, finances, everything, right? Everything
Yeah,
that you have not spent probably 10 years in your career preparing for,
yeah,
you flipped completely.
yeah.
Um, but you're embracing it. You're really enjoying it.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, sorry.
what was the initial experience? So coming in to do these topics that you've never done before.
So again, it's like when you are managing competent people, and you are seeing that, for example, the thing that was also very far away was this whole financing or finance department and this operations side. Um, Having somebody there who was already managing it was basically just my interface of making decisions, and this also helped a lot, of course. And the sales side was really difficult. When I started originally, like 5 years ago, I had really much troubles even talking to an external customer or like a party. I mean, this developed over the project work, and I was more and more able to also express. And now the sales, you are basically responsible to just talking to strangers and sometimes like managing partners. It's quite difficult. However, this is, I think, something that's uncomfortable that one has to learn. But the thing that I also enjoy most is structuring this, our value proposition. And you also have to figure out like some frameworks on how can you even conduct hypotheses over the market. And it was also the first time where we could really have a whole company vision and strategy on how can we bring everything walking in one direction. And like I also saw this OKR system. I guess you might also know this. Google
Yeah.
at some point into everybody should know this at some point. It also helps you again, like this programming. You are basically telling like what's important, breaking it down into different departments, and then breaking this down into different people. And yeah, it was very much important to figure out the value proposition and what are we actually. It's always like such a difficult question to ask yourself. We point we're also developing in wrong directions where we're just following things that were interesting for us, but nobody cared about it, just because in some project it came up. And now having one ear at the market and one ear at the tech, you can then figure some more things out. And this is also an art for itself, figuring out the value proposition that brings both worlds together, because both worlds are so intuitive when you look in each of the sides. And I guess having an interface combining tech and the business side is, I would even say, necessary or required for this. It becomes fun to just think about value proposition and refining it. It's also quite technical to form a framework for hypothesis. Yeah.
I like you mentioned a lot of things there, particularly frameworks, right? I'm doing, guess you could say, sales more than 10 years, as sad as that sounds. More than more than half my life now at this stage. I've been in a sales based role. Only about 5 years ago did I really start to think about frameworks, sales frameworks. I post a lot on LinkedIn now. I have a framework for that. There's a framework for absolutely every single element of what we can do to our jobs. I also like maths, not so much statistics. I like chess, but I can see where you start to say, oh, I like maths, I like statistics, and then you start talking about OKRs, and you were really able to take, I guess you can say, with business, people say it's risk or it's chance, but with OKRs and with frameworks, you actually reduce the chance and you get a percentage likelihood outcome of X action equals Y result.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes, I must say also OKR is so, I find it so genius and it's so much fun because it breaks down this whole complexity of what everybody has to do into this pyramid that where everybody can just also have an ownership. And it's always this bottom up and top down that is always happening, what I'm observing. Nowadays, you have the experts for everything that know their things better than you, of course. And they have to have their influence, but they have to be influenced by the company vision or the strategy. I really love the structure of the framework, and it makes it so easy to be focused and also so nearly easy to also, if you need to pivot, then you can take your whole company with you and not lose somebody on the way, because it has to be completely transparently communicated to everyone.
Nice. Before I jump into the final questions, Florens, the quick fire questions, I wanted to ask, going to be a bit broad, so I do apologize, but what would you say has been your biggest lesson around leadership that has had the best impact on you?
So I guess the best lesson for leadership is there is always a personal side attached to it. And there is always, especially in a startup, you are like a high performing unit. And the personal side is getting very, very often ignored by this. The frustration everybody experiences because everybody expects nearly excellence from each other. And just a few, when did we started also with our management team to also look more into the personal side, this interpersonal communication and so on. I guess if this would be priority earlier, I guess it would have reduced a lot of frustration for a lot of parties. And it also bounds the team very much together. And in the end, the team is the most important thing. So I guess from leadership, one can think about like every framework and so on, but in the end, there are persons behind it. And you have to make sure that everybody is somehow happy and fulfilled. And this is, I guess, the biggest leadership. It's not just about commanding and showing the vision. It's also about taking and motivating and taking people with you.
Nice. Like that. Into the quick fire questions. I got 3 of them for you. First one, content that you would recommend for other listeners, whether it be a book or podcast or audiobook.
Yeah, I guess we already mentioned like this extreme ownership, but I see this is old news already. And there are also some very much classics from the art of leadership, or like just listening to the podcasts, or like listening to the interviews of Steve Jobs that I find very, very much interesting. But I guess one very underappreciated leadership novel that I just recently listened to is like called Death by Meetings. And it is really much interesting what perspective they had on meetings and how much this pays into motivating everyone and stop getting bored during like 90 minutes meetings. So I think this is one underappreciated secret tip that I can make. And I guess there's also one podcast that's less about leadership but called Acquired, that just looks behind the scenes of bigger companies, how they moved and how they made decisions. Exactly.
Nice.
I guess it would be some recommendations.
Nice. What would your 3 non-negotiables be when it comes to leadership? And when I say non-negotiables, I mean like the sort of 3 principles that you set yourself and your team to say, right, this is us, this is who we are.
Yeah. I think it's this. Yeah, if I would call it maybe brutal honesty. It is never good to put things on a long term. If it's uncomfortable, you really have to steer inside the conflict. So I guess brutal honesty and transparency is very important. Also to be respectful. I mean, sometimes one thinks it's maybe disrespectful to be very much honest, but it's actually respectful and solves a lot of after problems. And I'm not sure if I can come up with 3, but the second one is, I think one should never, this is a really, really old principle, never argue from authority and argue, we have to do this because I am the CEO or I am the CTO. You always have to take everyone with you and always be aware of that these experts have a much clearer perspective on some aspects of the business than you have. And your job is to bring them together. So never argue from authority. And the fourth one, I might combine it again. This continuous learning approach, you're never done. And I also nowadays we have coaches and so on, and I always hear that they are even coaching like very, very much experienced managers. And the easiest questions are then also difficult for them, and it never stops for things to be difficult. So continuous learning is also true for leadership, for sure.
Nice. I like that. Really like that. This might be the most difficult one, but if you were to go back and do it all again, is there anything you do different?
I think it's rather in the point of validating. It's not maybe too much about leadership, but what I would do it again is validating some hypothesis better before you go in a direction. We had like a very long time running with our product in one direction that nobody really cared about. And then it's really difficult to steer the whole team into another direction that is more business driven. So I guess spending more time on validation and not everything that's scientifically interesting is also interesting for the market. So I guess this is one thing I would encourage to not running in a deep tech direction that just purely sparks your scientific interest.
Nice. Florence, that takes us to the end of the episode. Thanks a million for being such an excellent guest here at the Leadership Labs.
Cool, Anthony. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
That concludes another enlightening episode of the Leadership Labs podcast. If you found today's episode thought-provoking and informative, be sure to subscribe to the Leadership Labs on your preferred podcast platform or on YouTube. Thank you once again for joining us on this journey through the Leadership Labs. Until next time.